It's the 1890s and America is looking to flex its muscles. The United States looks to exert its power in the Western Hemisphere. Spain's imperial control of two territories, the Philippines and Cuba, has deteriorated. America saw an opportunity to help these two oppressed countries gain their liberty, much like we did from Great Britain in the American Revolution. This all leads to increased tensions with Spain.
One of the sources of that tension was the Cuban Revolution. Only 60 miles off the coast of Florida, the United States had always wanted Cuba. However, Spain had always controlled it. Nevertheless, like Hawaii, United States firms had invested millions of dollars in Cuban sugar. Then, in 1895, led by Jose Marti, the Cubans wage an armed revolution against Spain and revolt for their independence. American public opinion split over the Cuban Revolution. Some supported Cuba because they saw Cuba, like us, fighting for their liberty against an oppressive European ruler. Others opposed American involvement in the Cuban Revolution because they feared that it would damage American sugar investments.
As the revolution rages on in Cuba, America is pulled into the conflict, and eventually led to the Spanish-American War. The first reason is yellow journalism. Yellow journalism is a sensational style of reporting that exaggerated stories to attract and enrage readers. In the 1890s, the newspaper business was booming. There were two titans of the industry, Joseph Pulitzer and William Randolph Hearst. A fun fact, the Pulitzer Prize is actually named after Joseph Pulitzer, and if you've ever been to Hearst Castle, this is actually the home of William Randolph Hearst. Reporters demonized the war tactics of the Spanish, especially General Valeriano Weyler. They called him the Butcher and claimed that he poisoned wells and actually threw children to the sharks. All this was intended to generate sympathy for the Cubans. Yellow journalism was so out of control that when photographers told Hearst that they couldn't find any pictures to back up these claims, he simply said, "You furnish the pictures, and I'll furnish the war."
American anger towards the Spanish was further stoked by the second cause of the Spanish-American War, the Delone Letter. In 1898, the New York Journal, which was owned by Joseph Pulitzer, published a private letter of the Spanish minister to the United States, Enrique Delone. The letter was private and was never meant to be seen. In the letter, Delone calls the United States President William McKinley weak, and claims that he would do anything in order for the people to like him, implying he's nothing more than a puppet. While most Americans agreed with this assessment of William McKinley, they saw it as an outrage that a Spanish minister could insult the President of the United States publicly. Delone's private insult of McKinley was seen as a public insult of the United States by the entire Spanish people. Americans believed all Spaniards thought the same of all Americans. As a national insult, American public opinion began to turn in favor of war with Spain.
The final reason, and the spark towards war with Spain, was the explosion of the USS Maine. With revolt brewing in Cuba, President McKinley sent the USS Maine to Havana Harbor in 1898 to protect American lives and property. But on February 15, 1898, in the middle of the night, an explosion rips the Maine in half, and sinking it in Havana Harbor. 260 of the 350 sailors on board are killed. Following the explosion, yellow journalists do their work. Photos and sketches of the wreck circulate. Without evidence, reporters blame Spain for using a cowardly secret weapon. The bodies of the victims were sent home, and funeral processions moved through the streets. The mast and the bell of the Maine are sent home, and a memorial was made at Arlington National Cemetery, which still remains there today. Due to the imagery presented by these events, Americans demand revenge. Remember the Maine will be the rallying cry that launches America to war.
The first action of the war is seen in the Philippines. The United States Congress declared war on Spain on April 25, 1898, but unbeknownst to the Spanish, Undersecretary of the Navy Theodore Roosevelt had sent the Pacific Fleet to the Philippine Islands weeks before this declaration. On May 1, 1898, Admiral George Dewey sailed the U.S. Pacific Fleet into Manila Bay. The U.S. Pacific Fleet took the Spanish fleet completely by surprise and annihilated them. This incredible naval victory allowed U.S. Marines to land and join up with Filipino rebel forces who had taken up arms against the Spanish. The Philippines had been controlled by Spain for over 400 years. Spain had imposed Catholicism and had brutally subjugated the Filipino people. When war with the United States breaks out, the Filipinos decided it was time to fight for their liberty. With the aid of the United States, the Filipinos drive the Spanish troops out of their country within 4 months, officially liberating the Philippines from Spanish rule.
The second front of the Spanish-American War was in the Caribbean. With war raging in the Philippines, the U.S. Navy blockades Cuba. A blockade is when a military prevents supplies from entering or leaving a country. This is a military strategy that can starve out an enemy. The United States ground forces invade the island, and on July 1st, 1898, one of the most significant battles occurs. This is the Battle of San Juan Hill. Led by Teddy Roosevelt and his Rough Riders, a group made up of boxers, hunters, gunfighters, sheriffs, and a bunch of other rough and rugged guys just like Teddy Roosevelt, and became one of America's first Special Forces units. Under withering Spanish fire, Roosevelt led his Rough Riders up San Juan Hill, taking a key strategic position, allowing the U.S. Army to win the battle on the next day. This win is a key victory for the United States. Teddy Roosevelt is anointed the hero of San Juan Hill, propelling him to the status of national hero. 2 days later, the desperate Spanish fleet attempts to break the blockade and is destroyed. With Spanish resistance in the Caribbean wiped out, the United States Marines invade Puerto Rico, and the island is quickly taken over.
After only 16 weeks of conflict, Spain was defeated. The war officially comes to an end with the signing of the Treaty of Paris of 1898. In the treaty, Cuba gains its independence as its own sovereign nation, but it becomes a U.S. protectorate, which is essentially a little brother country. Cuba was sovereign and can govern itself, but the United States had the ability to intervene, at times, in Cuban affairs. Spain agreed to give up Puerto Rico and the Pacific island of Guam to the United States, and America quickly annexes these two as new territories. The United States also paid Spain $20 million for the annexation of the Philippine Islands as a new territory. Altogether, the United States gained 3 new territories from the Spanish-American War: Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippine Islands. So why does this matter? The Spanish-American War is a hugely influential event of the 20th century. Americans at the turn of the century referred to the Spanish-American War as a splendid little war. This is due to the fact that it was quickly won, and the fact that the victory was so complete. With the victory in the Spanish-American War, the United States officially becomes a world power. The other countries of the world would have to recognize our military strength and officially consider the United States as a player on the world stage. American military power is now respected worldwide. By the conclusion of the Spanish-American War, America had officially gained a worldwide empire with the territories it annexed in the Pacific and the Caribbean.